All right, let's go on to our next topic, though. Rachel, this is going to be your topic. So why don't you share with us?
Yeah, as you mentioned before, I am the second half of Intergalactic Circus, a podcast where I have with my bestie Yukiko, where we talk about some serious and not so serious issues that relate to society and just like our personal experiences as women of color in our now approaching our middle-age years, what have yous. And one topic that we had a lot of response to was that of privilege, and then also just speaking on feminism as a whole, I think is an interesting topic to have with you gentlemen, and I don't think that that's something that you guys have discussed, so I thought it would be cool to be your resident expert on this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm down. So, you shared a chart with us. Does everybody have the chart accessible?
I got it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking at it?
Can I need the one that you shared, Clay. I need you to allow my email to see it.
What? You don't have the privilege.
What?
Are we looking at the white privilege checklist right now?
I have no email privilege.
Let me see what I can do here.
You are
And is
currently
that-
oppressed via email.
Is that the that Google document that we're supposed to be opening up to?
Yes. Do you... Here.
Okay, that was the one I was having problems with too.
Okay. You guys should now have...
Yeah, it's a little circular kind of diagram thing with some
Okay,
like
here we go.
Yeah. You scroll down.
Like-
It's in there.
like a sunburst kind of situation.
Yeah.
I'm
Ooh.
scroll down and where inside the
Oh,
chat?
yeah, okay. I haven't
It's
seen
the
this one.
only big image with a big... You'll know as soon as you see it, Rocco.
I'm in the chat. I don't see it.
No, there's a link that I needed you to click that takes you to Google Drive.
No, I am.
Oh.
Never mind. Now it's taking me. Never mind.
Okay, Rocco really is middle-aged. He's like an old man that doesn't know how to use a computer.
Where's the
Dude,
start button, Sonny?
I clicked it a million times and it kept telling me that I couldn't do it.
Yeah, because you probably didn't have privilege, and I gave you
Yeah,
privilege.
exactly.
Privilege.
I take privilege.
I don't think it has to be like subliminal messaging.
It's not. That's not subliminal at all. That's straight up
It's not when he's yelling,
Blatant messaging.
Yeah. Privilege.
yelling it at you. Got it.
Okay, so with this, how do you want to start, Rachel?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of people have kind of a weird idea of what privilege even means. A lot of people think that privilege means you grew up with money and you had an easy life and you've never experienced anything hard and everything's been handed to you, blah, blah, blah. And so when they hear the word privilege, they are immediately like, pushed back by it, and they think that someone's making assumptions about their upbringing. But really, the idea of social privilege, not financial privilege or anything like that, is that just from being born, what you are naturally, there are certain either advantages or marginalizations that you experience solely based on that. Like you guys, as straight white men, probably from relatively middle class upbringings, etc. You have a college education, blah, blah, blah. Like you are way up here on the privilege
I don't think it gets any
scale.
better, right?
Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like,
that's
I think
the
you guys
top.
are kind of the cream of the crop on that.
Yeah.
The only thing that would probably make you even more so is if you were, like, extraordinarily rich. Like, that would be...
millionaires
Yeah,
or
yeah.
billionaires.
Like,
then it's
like
just
trust
adds
fund
that.
babies or something.
Yeah.
Right, and there's some other, like, kind of nuanced things that are in the little map thing that we can go over a little bit too, but basically, like, yeah, you guys are kind of at the top of the thing here, and someone, like me, I'm a black female, from kind of like a low-income family and this and that, whatever, like, I'm much lower than you guys are. Like, there's a huge, disparity socially, what's expected of me, what's thought of me, stereotypes, etc., that are based solely on these things that I can't even control. So I think that it's an issue that a lot of people don't really think about because they don't have to, especially someone who may be in a similar position to you guys, where you just go through your life and you don't bump into these issues, so you don't really think they exist.
And I don't know how much this will derail or contribute to your direction of the topic, but I'm always fascinated why some people, particularly in our Alan, Rocco, and my situation, there are people that just don't believe that exists. And I think you hit a little bit of a nerve, not a nerve, but like on point in saying that, okay, well, we just don't experience it, so that can contribute to our
That's a big reason.
our nativity
It's not in
or
our
ignorance,
awareness.
but you know, Rocco, Alan, and I don't experience, but I feel like we definitely can understand. It's almost like, you know, I might not see it, I might not experience, but I absolutely believe that it's there.
Yeah.
I don't really know what is the difference between us and them then?
The idea between, like, the difference, I would say, is that you are open-minded enough to understand that experiences exist in the world that aren't your own.
Right.
And I feel a lot of people don't have that ability or refuse to, like, get there. And that's a very immature thought process, thinking that how you were born is the way that everyone else was born. And I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to even look around and say, okay, if me and Clay are standing next to each other, like, we're not the same. Like, this is like Sesame Street level shit, guys. Like, we're not, you know, like, we are different people. So chances are, based on the fact that Clay and I are inherently different, we probably experience life a little different, right?
There's a perspective out there in the United States it is like, in the 60s and the 70s we were doing our equal rights movements, and there is some like I'm saying, it's a thought process that's being perpetuated that's incorrect. That's saying that the playing field's now level, and they believe the work is done. The playing field's level. So what do you got to bitch about? You know, and it's not the case. It's not true whatsoever. But that's that ignorant side doesn't have the ability to, like you were saying, put themselves in other people's shoes or know that there is other experiences out there besides what they're only going through themselves. But they now think that it's all a level playing field, and that's not the case, you know?
Yeah, people
but I see that a lot out here.
That laws passed equal action done, and that's not the case. Like, for instance, there's a law passed that you can't pay a woman less than you pay a man, but it's already been proven through multiple scholarly studies that you can actually look up that if you present a resume to someone with a male name on it, and you present that exact same resume to someone with a female name on it, and they brought them both in for an interview, they're offering the female less for the exact same position for the same skills and everything. And same with, you know, in terms of, you know, gay rights or racial issues or whatever. Like, it's illegal to do these things, but people will do what they want to do.
What was the name that you said people, like, you joked around that, like, how to pronounce your name? Rachel instead of Rachel was like Rachael.
It's Rachael, Rachael, Rochelle.
Right.
Like, it's all kinds of things.
And the same studies, like, statistically would say, like, a David or a Frank resume would get pushed up a lot higher than a Rochelle if it was pronounced or spelled that way or whatever.
I think most people assume that I'm white. When they talk to me on the phone or they see my resume or things like that, they assume that I'm white. And so I've actually gone into interviews and people have taken a step back. Like, they weren't expecting it because it's expected, especially as a black woman, which is weird because black women are statistically now the highest percentage of college educated people, like above everyone else. Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
But we're still perceived as very much like of a lower education level and lower standards for everything. And so when they see a black woman come in who's well-spoken and, you know, you had this list of credentials, whatever, they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm confused. And, and so it's like, it's an idea. That kind of goes with the privilege thing, and that they think these bad things. And now I have to carry that weight around with me every day because I have to deal with people thinking, you know, I'm stupid just because I am black and a female and from a poor family, basically.
Right.
So there's a lot there with privilege. And with privilege, I think a lot of people forget that, like I said, there's like nuanced, like kind of small things. Like one of my kind of favorite ones to bring up with people is just being like catering to your given genders, like your biological genders stereotypes, basically. Like, that's a privilege. You know, and that's something that I have experienced a lot of recently, and I've been kind of documenting it on my Facebook, which kind of cracks my friends up. I like to try to find a way to bring comedy or, you know, kind of some lightheartedness into educating people about inappropriate topics. I feel like that's a good way to go about it. I'm definitely like a ball buster, but I'm also like a good person and like a jokester at heart. So, like,
for sure.
You know, I like to bring some comedy to it. So I don't really cater to like female stereotypes very much. I mean, I know, like, you know, I've got makeup on and like a little bow and whatever, but like I have a lot of masculine tendencies. One of which is I'm very much into fitness, and so, you know, I have like visible muscle tone, and I'm also very tall. I'm almost 6 foot, and so people have been now that, it's like spring, summer, have started to do that, like, oh my God, that's a man thing. And so like, that's a privilege that some women have, that they never have to worry about someone thinking that they look like a man, because they cater to, basic female kind of like gender stereotype type things. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Or if you're like a man and you're a little effeminate, like that's another thing.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, I wonder, and this is not a contest, but how do I put? I don't know. It just popped in my head that like I know being, I come from a place where. I come from the Jersey Shore, basically. Like that show was my like no joke. That's where we went to the beach every summer. And those people are absolutely, and the mentality is so overwhelmingly the majority mentality. So growing up and just like you better tan, better get big, better talk about women like they're objects, and better use them like they're objects. Growing up and being very much like I just like one girl, like I want a family.
Yeah.
And being a little bit more goofy and not this like, bro, did you watch that UFC, bro? Like, and I was into wrestling and stuff like that, and like
my new haircut, like that.
Yeah, and it definitely seeped through. Like Alan and Rachael remember me from college. I definitely brought that with me. But that definitely, I don't know if that was me inherently, and it felt really good to escape that a little bit. But anytime I was different, like very nerdy into comics, like that was something that was like frowned upon or thought of as like being like too much of a sissy, or like, you know what I mean? And so. It's there, and I'm not trying to say is one harder than the other, but it's just interesting that that exists within men as well, because there are some sects of feminism that don't. I take a little bit of issue when feminism is so strong that it's all about women, and don't get me wrong, women definitely have it a lot harder, and it deserves to be noted, like Black Lives Matter does. But at the same time, I really respect and find myself aligning more with feminism in the sense that everyone is created equal, gender or anything, because there are certain things of the male side of it that really get like hit. Like there's a concept of like. If you're a guy, you need to be the breadwinner of your family. You need to be the white horse that constantly comes in and like saves the day and always has to like have a solution, and that sucks. And I guess in my own head, like why I lean that is because I don't want the pendulum to swing so far in one way where, now we do it in retaliation to men. But what I would really like is like, no, look. We need to make it even, but in the process, it would be nice to also acknowledge.
But I think that's the
well.
true meaning behind feminism, from
Right.
my
In my
understanding
head,
at
yeah.
least, and that there's extremism in any belief, and that there's people who are going to take it in a completely different way. But
Sure.
I think the true meaning behind feminism is exactly what you're saying,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm a believer in feminism too as well, because I'm a believer in equality between everybody, no matter gender, no matter race, no matter what it is. So that's why I would say I'm in agreement with feminism. Although I'm in disagreement with anybody that takes pretty much anything in life into the extremes. To be
Right,
honest,
so that's a little. I'm actually glad that you brought that up, Clay, because that was something that I definitely wanted to note, just as kind of like a 101 level thing. Since you said that the majority of your audience is kind of like middle-aged white males. Maybe you guys don't have as much education on this thing, but what I identify as and what I believe, and the majority of feminists believe, is the version of feminist to be, is what's called an intersectional feminist. And that is basically someone who recognizes social issues and, the levels of impact that it has on people based on every type of marginalization that there is, gender, race, your sexual identity, your class level, things like that, where you're using all of those pieces of information in order to, develop information and help somebody. So we're talking about men, we're talking about women, we're talking about gender non-binary, we're talking about gay, we're talking about lesbian, we're talking about straight, we're talking about everybody all together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what intersectional feminism is. So like what Rocco said, that's kind of like what feminism is. And what you're talking about, Clay, is what is commonly referred to as white feminism, which isn't to be confused with like white people, though a lot of white feminists tend to be white. It's kind of ignoring those different levels of marginalization, and ignoring all those issues of, sex, race, sexual identity, etc., and only focusing on the issues of, basically like, straight white women, like the suffragettes basically were white feminists, and everyone's like, oh, aren't you like super happy about like the suffragettes doing stuff? It's like, not really, because like they didn't recognize I was a fucking human until like 40 years later.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's
so yeah, so
super
you kind of
interesting.
have to make sure to keep keep that in mind. And a lot of men, I think, are turned off by feminism because they see it as this fight for women only. But actually, little known fact, women in feminism actually fought for the right for men to be recognized as rape victims and not just women. And that was, and that's not something that a lot of men even realize, and we work for everybody.
Our culture is, it's just like, when you make your caricatures on TV or movies, it's like, all right, let's make a feminist person. It's just like,
it's like a butch,
hairy-pitted woman who's like, fuck man.
And,
fuck man.
Right.
My sister days.
Yeah. So, damn, I was gonna say. Oh yeah. So the other thing that's interesting that I don't think a lot of people know are the different waves of feminism, and I feel like we might be getting a little bit off track, so we can go back on really quick. But I just think it's interesting to talk about the different ways of feminism, what they perceive to be important, and how within the waves themselves clash at times. I believe it's like the second and third wave tend to not really I think the third wave was created because they didn't like the way the second wave was made and all that stuff, or their ideals and stuff, because I think the second wave was look, we need to own our sexuality. It was in the 60s, and they were let's be very girly, let's be very let's be this gender. And then the third wave, probably I think in the 80s or late 70s, was why do we have to wear lipstick, why do we have to do blah blah, blah? And so they almost pulled themselves away from that ideal, which is something that you were talking about, in that this gender role that you have to fulfill, which is not necessarily the case. You don't. It just so happens that we've had this majority in the society be the way it has been for so long. So it's really easy to think that's what you're supposed to do and have that pressure, but it doesn't mean that doesn't make you anything less than what you are, right? So. Yeah.
And I consider what's happening now, personally, I consider it a fourth wave. I consider it, people a lot of the time think that this is still third wave feminism, but I feel like third wave feminism has kind of done what it was going to do, and we have moved on to a new wave of feminism, which is what's going on now, in current times. And I feel like the idea of intersectionality is kind of a lot more apparent in this wave of feminism than definitely it has been in first and second wave feminism, because a lot of that was just
basic rights, right?
Just like white women do. I saw this illustration, which I thought was just it spoke to my life, where it was a black woman in the center, and on her left was a white woman, and on her right was a black man. And the black woman was in the center, being pulled to one side by the white woman based on feminist ideas. These men aren't going to do anything for you. You have to stick with us, blah, blah, blah. But then on the other side, being pulled by the black man, saying white people aren't doing anything for you. You have to fight with us. But yet he's shitting on her feminist, he's making her feel less because she's a woman, and the white woman's making her feel less because she's black. And so it's you can't win. And in those other waves of feminism, even up through the 70s, it wasn't included. Race and sexual identity and things like that weren't considered as much as they should have been. And I feel right now in our age, with how accessible information is, and how just more open-minded people are to issues, that a lot more stuff is being discussed on a lot more kind of better levels than they were before. So
I think, in my way of seeing that way that happens and works is by shining an awareness on it. We were saying, that we at least can open and understand that we don't go through everybody else's experiences in life. We go through what we go through. But by seeing what other people go through in life, I can now shine an awareness on this and start to see how it could exist, or how it is in the world, where I normally wouldn't have seen it. And I think that right now, with all the things that are occurring, from feminism to the white privilege side to all these other things that are occurring, it's showing us, it's putting an awareness on this, and it's making us say, okay, enough with just tucking that back and acting like it doesn't exist. We need to start to really approach this and come up with a solution.
That piece is so fascinating to me, because if you look at history is always going to repeat itself, and it proves that all these people who are conservative or pushing back on these movements, they always fail. We always end up pushing forward, and all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. And if you don't look back and regret your decision to push it, the next generation certainly does. And there's white women couldn't vote, and black people couldn't vote, and that was the equivalent of today's standards of trying to get gender neutral people to use a bathroom. People are freaking out about that, but people are freaking out in the same way about letting white people,
black people,
and now,
women.
And wow, that really killed America by letting them people vote. Let me tell you, so you gotta look back, just perspective, man. Look back and be is this really a problem? and just fucking let it go.
Wife, do you think that she's less than you? Yeah. You would no, of course not. My wife is great. So then why the fuck do you look at this guy or this girl who you are mad at because they were born with a penis and now are identifying as like
and they want to go to the bathroom the bathroom
just let them go to the bathroom.
You want them to pee right here in front of you? No.
Yeah.
They need to go to. Call it a day. Like it's not that. Really, what it boils down to is just like. It's such a simple concept, and people make it so complicated. Yeah. It's just that every single person you see is equal to you. Yeah. They are not better or worse than you. We are all humans made on the same plane, and we just happen to have a different mix of like weird chemicals going on that made you one color and me another color, and him like boys and her like girls, and they not have like any
association.
Like, they just want to, like, just let people be and let it exist the way that they do and not make your life and your identity based around the hate of another person, which I don't.
And like that hate, I gotta imagine, comes from fear, like we talked about, and the ignorance and like not being around it. We all kind of live in cities or have lived in cities that have a large amount of culture. Like SCAD certainly had people from all over around the world. This wasn't like a university in Maine, So I think that adds a ton. And I always, like, my sister's living in New Jersey. I really wanted her to move out of. I just think that's important to like move out wherever you are, regardless of if you're really cultured. I think it just does a ton for your own personal growth and your perspective on the world. And I feel like the majority of these people have lived in the one spot they have lived in for so long. And, I can understand if you are, a farmer, or if you are like a mailman in Rhode Island and all you know is your small town, it would be really hard for you to grab perspective and an understanding, right?
What is it? You know what I mean?
I don't know. I mean, the internet is everywhere. Like, you can easily access, like, everything you need in any part of the world.
But it still doesn't matter. Acceptance of individuals it's not needed to have to travel the world to do.
You don't need to
you know what I mean? Like,
another person to understand that they matter as much as you do. Like, I could have never met any of you in my life, and if I walked up to you on the street, my default thought is not like, they're less than me, they're worse than me. Even if I've experienced a bunch of shit from a bunch of white men, like, you are different white men.
Absolutely.
Like, I have to treat you as a different, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't take anything but, like, the right mental state. Like, that's not information. That's just like you being a decent fucking human. Like,
I was just going to say, it's just morals and values right there.
Right, that's all it is, Rocco.
That should be basic shit. Like, come on.
It's Sesame Street. It's Sesame Street, like I said.
I'm connecting the dots, and I think that mental understanding gets tainted by subconscious habitats that you live in. For like, if you live in a place where your job gets like is for whatever reason just complicated, or like allows you to align with a certain easily, if you're aligned with a Republican, you're anti-gay, you're anti blah blah blah, and it'd be really easy to almost join that team, right? And like believe in what they believe in. And I think it's about tainting this and stuff like that normally would allow them to be open-minded. I don't know. It's complicated. It's an intangible thing.
As well, guys, though, is that we're not naming on is education too.
Yeah.
So
see, no,
like,
I don't know
everybody's
if I
going to
agree
school
with
because
that.
here's the white privilege taught in education, right? We learn about slavery and all these different things that happen from the economic side, right? What does that say? That's just playing it down. That's from the white side. So it's saying like, oh yeah, we had slaves because they had to pick up cotton and they had to do this stuff out here. We needed to have that. We get taught it from the economic side. We don't get taught from like what it actually was occurring and how it was happening, right? That's a white privilege. So this is a subconscious thing being taught. It's right, and this is starting to be built. And this is something that has been done. But a school teacher did this with young students where it was white students, but she just broke them up between blue-eyed and brown-eyed, and she did the same thing. She said, guys, we're going to have the blue-eyed just be, they're not going to be intelligent, not going to be capable of doing things. We're just going to do this little thing. So today we're going to act like that, okay? So she's a blue-eyed teacher, and they're like, and the brown-eyed students right away go, well, how come you're the teacher if you're blue-eyed? You know, and then she's doing her different things. She gets a little frustrated with it, whatever. She goes through her things, and she pulls up her geography map, and then she lets it go, and it swings around because it gets caught real fast. And they go, of course that happened because you're blue-eyed. It's because it's like we create these things at a really young level. It's very easy for us to start to create these like privileges. And then just through the small experiment, it's not different colors or different races or anything. It's just different eye color. And it's like they can already start to establish this. So subconsciously, like, we learn those things through history a lot too as well. Like I was saying, the economics with the slaves. But also, like, we get the massacres of Native Americans kill the white people, right? We get taught that in history.
Yeah,
but we don't get taught about when the Middleman Mountain massacres, when the white Mormons slaughtered everybody that came walking on the streets. Why is not being taught? Why is that not being taught? It's like a white privilege kind of thing, because then it's going to be like you're now looking bad at the white people, and they don't want to do that. You don't.
And that's the beauty of white privilege, and I feel like a lot of the time people don't really understand that, is that everything that's in the world around us is built on white supremacy. And I know that word, or that phrase rather, is kind of it's loaded. Like people feel like, oh, that's like some Nazi shit, that's like neo whatever. It's like, no, man, it's not.
No.
Like
it just means
the idea that like, you know, whiteness is the default.
Right.
And like history was written by white people. To be white is to be normal. Like if you have a show, if you guys were all on a show together, it's just like, it's a show.
Yeah.
But as soon as I come on the show, it's a black show. I'm the token character. You know what I mean? Like so it's just like, it's weird like that. And I like that Rocco brought up that that brown-eyed, blue-eyed example, because there was another one that I wanted to bring up where a teacher had students all crumple up a piece of paper, and she had the people in the first row throw it into a trash can, and all of them made it. The people in the second row, the people in the third row. And by the time you got to like the fourth row, the people in the back couldn't throw it in the trash can. And they're like, well, why can't you throw it in the trash can? You have the same crumpled up piece of paper that I do. Why can't you throw it in the trash can? Well, I'm way further back. Okay, so what? We have the same paper. We're the same age. We're all basically the same. But it's like, because you have that privilege where you were already put ahead of me before I even fucking started. So of course, like, I'm not going to make it in the trash can because I have all these.
And that's happening every day, where people are throwing stuff in the trash cans, and the gap just gets larger and larger as you grow older and more days go by, right? Like it gets harder and harder to keep up.
So that issue with the white supremacy term, I think that it rattles white individuals wrong, is that we have been driven by our emotions a lot in our lives, and that like just bugs us from the emotional level. But if we were to pull away from that and think logically and with reason, like you're gonna see that picture, that image, that if you're just like, whoa, okay, it does exist, it is real, it is out there. But we are so caught up in, oh well, you're just not blah blah blah, this or that. You know what I mean?
There's a term for that too, and that's called white fragility. That's a little vocab lesson. We can add that to the vocab list.
Rachel, you were so
feminism. Yeah, absolutely,
awesome.
Man. I'm on my shit today.
Yeah.
And that's the idea where like as soon as someone says something to you that you have this visceral emotional reaction, instead of taking what they're saying as like, you know, their experience and a sociological fact, you're too busy concerned about your own personal feelings and it being this attack on white people or your whiteness. And it's like, no, I'm just trying to tell you what it's like to be black. I'm not necessarily trying to attack your whiteness. And I feel like that's kind of been the issue with things like Black Lives Matter and with the All Lives Matter backlash and with the Blue Lives Matter backlash. And
the thing I cannot stand, that my blood boils, and just when someone's like, well, that's racist against white people. I'm like, oh my god.
There's no reverse racism.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, shut up. Even if it is, it does not compare to the amount of like racism that has been gone on other races. Like, there's just no compare. Like, that's like you stub your toe and like, or people have been like getting the arm chops off. Yeah, and like you stub your toe and like, well, I'm hurt too, guys. It's like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
That's something that I'd love to also define, I guess, while I'm being super informative, Alan, is the idea of reverse privilege or the idea of reverse racism. As angry as people like to get about that, those things don't exist. You cannot be reverse racist to someone. The idea of racism is discrimination, taking some silly idea about someone and using your power over them to enact that discrimination.
There is no power on the other side.
I don't have power over you as a white man, so no matter how much discrimination I could rightfully have, which is definitely apparent, black people can
not enough to suppress us.
I don't have the power to suppress you with it, whereas as a white man, you can take that hate of me as a black woman and keep me from actually doing things in life. So that's why there's no such thing as reverse sexism, reverse racism, reverse privilege. None of those things exist, because the idea of the power is what makes those sociological facts.
It can only always be on one side.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense.
It's still discrimination, but it's not racism, or it's not sexism.
Because it's not going to keep you from living your life, whereas it literally will keep. And I think a lot of the time people in positions of privilege don't get that. They think that privilege, you know, marginalization equals I got my feelings hurt, so I'm taking my ball and going home. It's like, no, my life is actually like at stake here or being changed here because of this thing, whereas your feelings are just hurt because I said, like, I called you a honky. But like if you call me the equivalent of that for, but like that's totally a different scenario. So that's an education that I wish a lot more people would love to have. And so that's why I've taken it upon myself with Intergalactic Circus and with just my own personal life to kind of be a voice for this stuff, because it's so important to me. I've lived this for 30 years now, and I've always spoken about it, but I want to be more now vocal about it and more public about it, because I feel like I've been given a pretty good gift with being able to speak to people about things. And so I want to get out. But
I think that's
okay. I'm sorry, Rocco. I will say though that it comes with a price. And I was telling you, Kiko, the other day that to do this, I've basically taken my little lamb of like a social life and a dating life out behind the barn and slit its fucking throat, because that's like what this is like, to live like this, because nobody wants to. I have cooties, like nobody wants to like.
Really? Now became that person. That's
like
stay away from that person.
Like
but you know what? I look at that as a filter to put a positive spin on that. You're filtering out people that just don't even belong in your life, and those that you won't even waste your time with, because what's going to happen is someone who actually shares your ideals in terms of the dating scene or whatever, like. They're gonna be like gravitated towards you, and you're gonna be surrounded by people who think the same way and believe in the same things, and that's just in the long run way better.
So I just want to call it.
So much to ask.
Yeah.
Exactly. So one thing you were saying about like you're coming out and you're speaking out about that, and I think that it's great that you're doing that. But I think that the individuals that need to do that a lot more too are the white individuals. The white, it's like I was talking about last week. Okay, there was a DJ I listened to talking about cops, and he's like, there's these bad cops that are out there doing this stuff. Just the same as if there was a DJ out there saying bad stuff and rambling about bad stuff. Me being a good DJ would speak up about that. I would say something about that. And with the bad cops out there, we all know that there's good cops, but they're not speaking out about it. And if they're not speaking out about it, they're put in the same basket that they're co-signing it. Same thing with the white supremacy side or the other things that are happening. It's that means that we as the white individuals need to be the ones that have the largest voice in this fight right now, because that says that you're not going to put us all in the same basket. We are going to be saying that there is something wrong here. We see it, we acknowledge it, and we're going to be fighting for it too.
We're going to call our friends out on this stuff, because a lot of the time people let this stuff go, and they don't I actually just had this kind of an argument about this with a good friend of mine, where he didn't understand that it made him just as racist to co-sign on someone else's racism. If you don't call them out in the way that they need to be called out about this stuff, you are basically giving them a pass to continue to do it, which really just says, I'm okay with you doing this or saying this, or I'm going to sugarcoat it for you, or I'm going to make it seem like it wasn't as bad as that, and it's like, no, you have to speak out. And especially, like you said about the DJ, use your position of power, be it, your position of power as just being a straight white male, so you're kind of on top of society, or using your power as a politician, as a celebrity, as some sort of whatever. Use that position to educate people in the right way, because that stuff
or a
matters.
podcast.
You have or a podcast. Exactly.
But it's true, right? Because I mean, a lot of times when you point that stuff out to people, a lot of people might be timid about doing it because they're worried, oh my God, I'm going to offend this person. But I guarantee you, maybe like 9 times out of 10, that person just has no idea. They're just ignorant of the fact, and you're just educating them to like understand that, and they're just like, holy crap, I've been going my entire life and I had no idea that this is the way things were. Like now I actually like have some of the light shed on me.
You said, you're not trying to attack them on someone's Facebook.
Of bringing it up, because like you and I have talked about this all the time. It's like you don't want to be like afraid. You're like, oh crap, I don't want to come off as that person that's always calling people out, or always like telling people they need to be doing this thing. Like I'm more righteous than somebody else. It's just like, no, like, hey, by the way, like, this is a thing.
I feel like I have this conversation.
It's a teachable moment, and I feel like people need to take more advantage of it. And I feel like if it's someone that there are ways to go about it, and that are appropriate, and you don't have to offend anybody. And if at the end of the day you came correct about it, Alan, and they still were like, they're like, fuck them. You know what I mean? Like, they're just out.
And that's kind of what I have to say too, because I'm out here, and I'm in the South, and I'm in the rural South.
We're out here, man.
And the rural South, and I deal on a normal daily basis. I'm on a normal daily basis with 65 plus. So it's like they're in a generation of a certain perspective. So it's like, guys, I have this conversation often. I do.
Yeah.
Like, when we talk about having to speak out nonstop, like I got to make sure that they know I'm not in agreement with whatever they're saying at that time, or whatever it is that they have, a perspective they have, and that doesn't always lead to good conversations, guys, or good like. Or I might be like,
Because you're sales, right? You're like selling insurance. So like if that happens, what happens? You just kind of like you're like
Yeah.
shit.
Like,
Like well, there goes my sale. But like at the same
Too,
time,
where
this
I'll like
person-
make my point and then
Yeah.
deter away and let's start talking about something else real quick. Because if it doesn't, then I know that I usually have to walk out.
It would be
door.
really great if you're in a position, because I know a couple people who are in positions with money financially. They don't need that. If they don't need the work, and if they then leverage that, where if someone comes off to them where they don't agree, they're like, I'm taking my work elsewhere. I don't need this. I'm out. Right. I think Josh Whedon said it best. Was like, never go into a meeting that you're not willing to leave. Right. That you're not willing to get up and get out. And it's really awesome. But a lot of times we are financially, we need the
You're
work, so
fine.
we kind of have to work with that. But that sucks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's fun out here.
Yeah. Can I ask for final thoughts before we wrap up? Anybody want to?
Please start to see everybody as just equal people. Like,
Yeah.
there's
Be open-minded.
nothing different here. We all have the same. We go through the same shit. We have like, I mean, not that we all go through the same shit, but we all are here on this world in
We're
the
all
same
going through
boat.
shit.
We're all
Like-
going through shit. We're all in the same boat. Let's just work together, and it would just be a lot easier.
Just recognize and understand. And I feel like
Yeah.
one of the most detrimental phrases that people could use is, I don't see color, I don't see blank. And the thing is, you need to see those things. That's the idea, is see me, see that I'm a woman, see that I'm black, see that I'm this, and understand that that is perhaps different than you, and that comes with some sort of value or some sort of lesson that you can probably learn from me, and appreciate that. Don't not pay attention to my experience and think that it's your own, because that's when the ignorance comes into play. So open your eyes, see color, see these things, and recognize them for the value that they are.
And would you agree to ask people to like, these situations are complicated. These are not paint by number situations. So all feminism is not just feminism, and Black Lives Matter is not just a bunch of people who hate police. And this like transgender is not just like a bunch of dudes running around in wigs trying to rape. Like this is not as easily as pointed of.
Wait, that's what
like,
people think.
Well, I'm being exaggerated, but there's a reason why people.
Yeah, there's men that are trying to like just get a free pass in the women's bathroom.
That is probably the biggest. Yeah,
I know that there's like shit tons of porn on the internet and stuff.
I know.
Like, what?
I know.
This is a real thing.
So
Oh my God, I have no idea.
like when
Super
you
real thing, guys.
with the things that I've mentioned that exist today and the future things, just before you're ready to accept any like, oh, that one person who wants to represent this movement, must mean that everybody who's like, take a minute to really dissect it and think for yourself and just like do the research before you label a whole group of people as one thing. I think
Absolutely.
I would add, but okay.
Just real quick. Also, do you want to just say kind of like how we read the charts here as well? Because I remember the first time I saw it, I was just like, I don't know
There's
what's
a lot of work
happening.
here. I don't know what's going on here. It's spinning in a circle. I'm confused. The way that privilege chart works, if you guys end up kind of sharing that with your listeners, is it's a circular thing. And what you do is you can pick any one of these lines, these kind of like diagonal lines that go through the center mark. And on one end of it is one kind of extreme, and the other end of the line is kind of like the other extreme. So like on one end, it might be male, and on the other end is female, but there's a whole spectrum in between male and female that you could fall between on that line. And the closer you are to the thing that is the privilege, which in this case would be male, the more of that privilege that you are getting to experience, and the further away from it, the more marginalization that you experience. So you can kind of go around this circle and be able to look at the thing that, check off all the things that maybe apply to you. So the word at the top, at one end of the thing would be the word that you would think that describes you one end or the other. And then along the lines, they all have a word that kind of describes the axis of privilege. So like, are you light-skinned or are you dark-skinned? And wherever you fall on that, you are marginalized or privileged on the axis of colorism. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, you can kind of read that, go through that. Yukiko and I, on our episode of Intergalactic Circus on privilege, we went through this just like piece by piece on each one of these and kind of discussed it from our perspectives on a lot of these. And obviously some of them were pretty obvious, where we fell. But then some of them, upon discussing it or even looking at it, we realized that we had privileges we didn't even necessarily think that we had, or we had marginalizations we didn't even necessarily think that we had. So it would be beneficial, I think, to everybody to just take like 5 minutes and just have a look at this map thing and just see where you fall on this stuff.
Gotcha.
Wild. I mean, it gets so detailed. It's just, are you even disabled? If you're not disabled, like that's a privilege, and not a lot of people think. They think I'm normal, You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but you're also very privileged and not have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah, you don't have to think about at all at any, like I can exist in my world and have for 30 years without a fucking thought about a handicapped parking space, a ramp, any sort of like visual or auditory, you know, like issues, or even like, you know, mentally divergent kind of issues, or, you know, learning disabilities, anything like that. I don't have to think about it. And so like it literally has not even popped into my mind a lot of the time. And so for me, it would be easy to just go, what's disabled people's problem? Like, life is easy. Of course it's easy. Like, I don't have to deal with any of that.
One thing I'm not seeing here is height. I'm serious though. Height, like
that is a
small guy,
advantage.
You do not.
I mean, maybe.
But which one's the advantage and which one's the disadvantage? Because like tall people, because like super tall people, like it can start to become a disadvantage, right? Like you're not in the bed correctly, can't walk.
Most tall people, I feel like, get more respected and feel like they have their shit together than a small guy. Because like maybe that's why I'm sorry, but like to earn people's respect, you have to do a lot more. I feel like as a smaller individual.
As a man, yeah, I think that's true. But then that also feeds into like weird gender stereotypes, because as a woman, I get shit on so much for being tall. So like, it's not really a privilege to be tall. It's a privilege to be male and tall, not female.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And attractive, Rocco. You'll never know my pain. Okay? You'll never know my pain. You
hard out there,
son
Rocco,
of a bitch.
That mug of yours.
You don't understand, man.
You'll never understand. You have a beautiful set of hair. Where's the baldism? All right. Let's.
That's a big reason.
You know, our nativity
it's not
or
in our
ignorance,
awareness.
but you know, Rocco, Alan, and I don't experience, but I feel like we definitely can understand. It's almost like, you know, I might not see it, I might not experience, but I absolutely believe that it's there.
Yeah.
I don't really know what is the difference between us and them then?
The idea between, like, the difference, I would say, is that you are open-minded enough to understand that experiences exist in the world that aren't your own.
Right.
And I feel a lot of people don't have that ability or refuse to, like, get there. And that's a very immature thought process, thinking that how you were born is the way that everyone else was born. And I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to even look around and say, okay, if me and Clay are standing next to each other, like, we're not the same. Like, this is like Sesame Street level shit, guys. Like, we're not, you know, like, we are different people. So chances are, based on the fact that Clay and I are inherently different, we probably experience life a little different, right?
There's a perspective out there in the United States that's, it is like, in the 60s and the 70s, we were doing our equal rights movements. And there is some like I'm saying, it's a thought process.
All right, let's go on to our next topic, though. Rachel, this is going to be your topic. So why don't you share with us?
Yeah, as you mentioned before, I am the second half of Intergalactic Circus, a podcast where I have with my bestie, Yukiko, where we talk about some serious and not so serious issues that relate to society and just like our personal experiences as women of color in our now approaching our middle-age years, what have yous. And one topic that we had a lot of response to was that of privilege, and then also just speaking on feminism as a whole, I think is an interesting topic to have with you gentlemen, and I don't think that that's something that you guys have discussed, so I thought it would be cool to be your resident expert on this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm down. So, you shared a chart with us. Does everybody have the chart accessible?
I got it right now. Yeah.
Looking at it?
Can I need the one that you shared, Clay. I need you to allow my email to see it.
What? You don't have the privilege.
Yeah.
Yelling it at you. Got it.
Okay, so with this, how do you want to start, Rachel?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of people have kind of a weird idea of what privilege even means. A lot of people think that privilege means you grew up with money and you had an easy life and you've never experienced anything hard and everything's been handed to you, blah, blah, blah. And so when they hear the word privilege, they are immediately like, you know, pushed back by it, and they think that someone's making assumptions about their upbringing. But really, the idea of social privilege, not financial privilege or anything like that, is that just from being born what you are naturally, there are certain either advantages or marginalizations that you experience solely based on that. like you guys as straight white men, probably from relatively middle class upbringings, etc. You have a college education, blah blah blah. Like you are way up here on the.
I don't think it gets any better, right?
Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like,
that's
I think you guys are kind of the cream of the crop on that. The only thing that would probably make you even more so is if you were like extraordinarily rich. Like that would
millionaires or billionaires. Are we looking at the white privilege checklist right now?
I have no email privilege.
Let me see what I can do here.
You are currently oppressed via email.
Is that the that Google document that we're supposed to be opening up to?
Yes. Do you? Here.
Okay, that was the one that I was having problems with too.
Okay, you guys should now have.
Yeah, it's a little circular kind of diagram thing with some
Okay,
like.
here we go.
Yeah, you scroll down.
Like
in there.
Like a sunburst kind of situation.
Yeah.
Scroll down and where inside the chat?
Yeah. Okay.
It's the only big image with a big. You'll know as soon as you see it, Rocco.
I'm in the chat. I don't see it.
No. There's a link that I needed you to click that takes you to Google Drive.
No, I am.
Oh,
never mind. Now it's taking me.
Okay, Rocco really is middle-aged. He's like an old man that doesn't know how to use the computer.
Where's the start button, Sonny?
I clicked it a million times and it kept telling me that I couldn't do it.
Yeah, because you probably didn't have privilege and I gave you privilege.
Yeah, exactly.
Privilege.
I take privilege.
I don't think it has to be like subliminal messaging.
It's not. That's not subliminal at all. That's straight up
blatant mess,
then it's
like
just
trust fund babies or something.
Yeah.
Right, and there's some other like kind of nuanced things that are in the little map thing that we can go over a little bit too. But basically, like, yeah, you guys are kind of at the top of the thing here. And someone, like me, I'm a black female, from kind of like a low income family and this and that, whatever. Like, I'm much lower than you guys are. Like, there's a huge, disparity socially, what's expected of me, what's thought of me. Stereotypes, etc., that are based solely on these things that I can't even control. So I think that it's an issue that a lot of people don't really think about because they don't have to, especially someone who may be in a similar position to you guys where you just go through your life and you don't bump into these issues, so you don't really think they exist.
And I don't know how much this will derail or contribute to your direction of the topic, but I'm always fascinated why some people, particularly in our Alan, Rocco, and my situation, there are people that just don't believe that exists. And I think you hit a little bit of a nerve, not a nerve, but like on point in saying that, okay, well, we just don't experience it, so that can contribute to our